subtitles. I'm not you, darling. Sexy boy. What? Shawn Michaels is rolling over in his grave and he's not even dead.
Welcome back to Beyond the Beermat, the wrestling podcast that has a rotating guest cast of hosts, much like Raw, and it was terrible, much like guest hosts were. And I'm not referring to you, just the fact that like a rotating host is like two. I can't seem to get both of you in the same room, so we're just going to have to go with flip a coin. Is it Matt? Is it Bill? It's Matt.
I thought we weren't name dropping.
Well, you're allowed the first name. How do I introduce you if you don't even have a fucking first name?
The voice. So how you doing, USG?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. I think what I was going to say is, as we start this podcast, we're going to bring it up because the World Cup is getting towards the latter stages. I had a look at some of the WWE fantastic joined together in a sort of Venn diagram of all my favourite things when wrestlers get involved in football. And you know, like you see where, like, I don't know, it's mostly Sheamus actually goes to these random football grounds because he's the only one that actually knows anything about it. Yeah. There was quite a good one with Rusev at the Bernabeu. But other than that, it's like Chad Gable and Jason Jordan at the new camp, and it's like, I love this. I have no idea what it is, but I love it. And then there's one with Dolph Ziggler and Natalya at Old Trafford, and it's like, yeah, that Fellaini guy, he's got cool hair. Please like us.
Oh, is that where they like send out two footballers as well?
Usually, yeah.
Oh, I saw one actually. It had one half of American Alpha or whatever they were called, Chad Gable and two probably Spaniards. They did a football thing, and Bailey was there as well, and it was about the art of intimidation.
Okay.
Or it might have been Jinder Mahal actually. It was Jinder Mahal. He came out and he was like, it's weird when you see like normal people stood next to wrestlers, and it gives you that sort of, you can understand how the size of a wrestler doesn't translate.
No, it's the size of a human being.
Yeah, and so it was a bit weird why they sent Bailey to teach two footballers about the art of intimidation when she's known for hugging people and being an underdog.
To be fair, if you as a bloke go up to random strangers and try to hug them, that can be quite intimidating.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it can.
You get yourself put in the bad books, and by that I mean a list or a register, if you will, very quickly.
Oh yeah, the sexy register.
That's a very different register. Yeah, but like the other stuff as well is like, it's sort of cringe when they do that, but at least that's like put aside on YouTube. Yeah. But like when the worlds actually collide, it gets even sort of worse because, first of all, Wayne Rooney and Wade Barrett. This is
jobbers.
What, both of them? Fair enough. Wade Barrett, who very English, should know what he's talking about. Talks to Wayne Rooney as if like, this is the thing that I find frustrating is I don't know whether it's catered towards an American audience. You can't necessarily use technical terms, but like Wade Barrett going, I would embarrass you in this ring, but you embarrass yourself on the pitch every week. And it's like, if you want to like, you call him a granny shagger at least. Not PG.
No, it's not PG.
Yeah,
that was a long time ago as well. That's been forgotten about.
What, the granny shagging or Wayne Rooney and Wade Barrett? Bit of both.
Yeah.
And then the thing that I find really weird is that like, I love actually Wayne Rooney doing the thing that I do when I go to independent shows and I'm drawing with the wrestler. He's like, come here.
Yeah.
I've got no intention of moving from my spot. You have to get here. All right. And then when Barrett does get in his face, he slaps him. Now,
was it a slap? Or
it was a slap, yeah.
Was it? Oh.
That's what I'm saying. It doesn't come across as the most masculine thing, and they try and portray it as like, oh my God, Wayne Rooney has just slapped the hell out of Wade Barrett. None of that looks good.
Yeah.
None of it, really.
It's good the way that Wade Barrett sells it though, in terms of going down on his ass because he's been slapped by Wayne Rooney in the WMD or whatever it's called.
I think that's the problem.
Slapping.
Yeah, that's the problem. It's like you have to sell for like celebrities, so selling for technically an actual athlete isn't too bad, even if it is just to the face.
Yeah, I wonder how it does translate to American audiences, but then you got to remember the Yanks do it to us all the time. Well, they do it to me because I don't know half the people they get in there. Like when you had
the NFL lot in the crowd and they try and sort of pop the crowd out. All it is to pop the crowd.
If they show like a little caption under their name and it says the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah.
Or
just
the
an actual
Baltimore Raven. If they show that, it's alright. But when they've actually got like guest people in the ring, who was the most recent one? We kept saying Balls or something like that, and he had his dad in the ring as well.
Oh, Lonzo Ball. Is he the one that dropped the N-word? Yeah.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah. But I didn't have the foggiest who he was.
I think, like I say, mostly it's just to pop the crowd.
Yeah,
and you're only getting football lads out there when like it's in England basically, and then so you've got Wayne Rooney, yeah, okay, fair enough. There's at least some interaction there. Mourinho and Shane McMahon is another one, whereby like Shane McMahon is at least Wade Barrett was English, and English to English sounds fine. Yeah. But when Shane McMahon's going, he's a member of your soccer team thing. I went into something that's called a pub. It all comes off a bit.
The Chelseas.
Yeah. And do you know what the weirdest thing for me is that like Mourinho is the kind of personality that is so suited to wrestling it's untrue. Like
Arrogant Hill.
Yeah, he just comes out and says the worst things. First of all, they don't give him a mic. Second of all, he's just sat there like he's Donald Trump and he's just seen the boogeyman. Couldn't give a fuck the entire time.
I don't know, it's a bit rough because he's got his kids there as well, hasn't he?
Yeah.
I'm sure he's got his kids there. He's like, if my dad was getting picked on by a cartoon villain, I don't know if it would crush me inside somewhat.
If you went to Raw and Shane McMahon started calling out your dad, you'd be buzzing.
I would love it, but I don't know, because when you're that age, because they were only young kids, weren't they? They were really young kids.
I don't think they thought their dad was about to jump the barricade and start laying some hands.
Nah, I guess not. But even if it is PG, that's not alright.
And then one that at least the other two I'd remembered, this one like erased, probably for a very good reason. Old school actor and Hollywood star Vinnie Jones.
Yeah.
At Capital Carnage, probably what? You're looking at 98 maybe? 97?
Yeah, I would have thought so, around 98, that sort of time.
It's really weird because the way he talks is... It's not even like... It's like Vinnie Jones times 4. Because he's like, we're going to sling him out of England. Vince McMahon is going to get it. And it sounds like Vinnie Jones, and yet it sounds like, vocabulary has actually advanced since then.
I think...
it just sounds off.
What do they say about wrestlers? Like, the best persona you can have is just an extension of who you are anyway, can't you? And so it does seem it's Vinnie Jones, but dialed up to 11, plus a little sprinkling of Brexit in there.
We're going to get rid of these Americans coming over here.
Britain, wrestling.
At least Vinnie Jones got ahead of the curve. He got well before anyone else, so he's like, get rid of everyone.
It was that hard man persona, but at the same time, you think there's a bit of nerves behind it. If he'd just gone in and less shouty.
Has Vinnie Jones ever done that?
Less shouty?
Yeah. Well, apart from Gone in 60 Seconds, where he was like a mute.
Yeah, where his true acting capabilities had to shine through because he had no words to rely on.
Is that like when Arnold Schwarzenegger's most famous role is like a role where he had to say virtually nothing?
What was that?
The Terminator.
Oh yeah, in the first one.
Both of them, really. Well, I say both of them, the only two that matter.
Was that his most famous role?
Probably.
Last Action Hero.
Great film.
It's alright, isn't it? I always get it mixed up with The Page Master. Is that what it's called? About a boy with a book?
Yeah.
I don't know why I got it mixed up.
The boy with the film ticket thing.
Maybe. Who knows?
No, because that's what Last Action Hero is. Are you confusing all films now, basically?
Yeah. That's a different podcast, though.
Yeah.
Matt's Marvel review.
Tangent on tangent on tangent. But the thing about it as well is that, like, when you get guys that Hollywood actors, whatever they may be, even back then, like the idea of a Vinnie Jones, it popped the crowd, whatever, they have to get physical, and it's hilarious, like Jeremy Piven doing top rope elbows or whatever he did, and all that sort of jazz. They have to clearly show they're physically superior to the wrestlers, even though we know they're not.
Yeah.
And then, I think with Vinnie Jones, they just basically said, just shove him as hard as you can, because he shoves Bossman into the ropes so hard, and Bossman sort of almost crucifixes himself.
Yeah.
It looks brutal. And not in a sort of good way, in a, you could have really hurt him there kind of way.
Like I said though, you've got to put the guest over, don't you? You've got to make them look stronger than the actual...
The guest has got to be stronger than the rest.
Has there ever been an incident where someone has battered one of the celebrities, or one of the guests that you recall?
Off the top of my head, I can think of one, when Kevin Owens powerbombed Kevin Federline.
Oh yeah. How long ago was that?
I'm not sure, but he just waved and then he's like, yeah, I'm here, and then he got killed. Does David Arquette count at all in any way, shape or form, because he had to have a match?
Yeah, he was...
He didn't really get hurt at any point though, so I suppose not.
See, now I'm thinking WCW, like Jay Leno when he had that...
Dennis Rodman and that.
Dennis Rodman must have... Didn't really ever... No, Dennis Rodman never took a beating because he was a big man, wasn't he? So you couldn't ever see that in WCW.
I think this is the problem. You veer in too much into the celebrity world, and it's like Mayweather and all that, and they're too protected.
Yeah, Mayweather certainly was, because in his Wrestlemania bout, he had an entourage of like 8 bloody great big blokes that were like his bodyguards in, what are these called? Rabbit ears.
Inverted commas.
He had his entourage in inverted commas, didn't he? Which were basically like trainee wrestlers and all that sort of thing, yeah. He took a couple of bumps though.
Yeah.
He did. He took like how women do that hair drag thing where they fly halfway across the ring.
Yeah.
If you grab them by the hair, he did that, and he must have taken a hip toss. I'm sure that happened, but little more than that, or little more than the Big Show actually like stepping on him to walk over him.
Yeah.
So he did take some sort of damage, but it's sadly like you've handed his ass to him, isn't it?
Yeah, I was going to say, like, comparatively speaking, Mayweather taking a graze to the face or a sort of shin to the back, it's not quite the same as him breaking the Big Show's nose.
No, not really, is it?
So basically what we're saying is WWE wrestlers, they have to take it from all angles, and that sounds horrendous. I'm not talking about any adult video stars that may not be with us anymore that won't get in the Hall of Fame.
Definitely not.
So basically what we're saying is, whenever WWE gets involved with football, it's bad, but whenever they get involved in celebrities in general, it's not great.
It can
be better than it appears, because like realistically speaking, like Ronda Rousey's a celebrity.
No, she's not. She's a trained
Athlete.
performer. Athlete.
That was you raspberrying Ronda Rousey. Anyway, I digress because I wanted to use the word I digress. And we're going to get on to the main topic of today's podcast, which is with the news that at the Aussie Super Show SmackDown Down Under thing that Shawn Michaels might be coming back, and that might lead to further involvement, potential WrestleMania match down the line, potential match down the line at least. The idea of how retirement can't stick, won't stick, just if you try and use them as something to hang up a painting, it won't happen because retirements just don't stick.
They don't.
Nah.
Terry Funk, the original Funkadactyl, if you will.
Okay.
The one that gave Brody to play his gimmick.
Like in much the same way that Tank Abbott was with 3 Count, he was like, all this time he's hiding some actual funk down in that grizzled veteran hardcore body. Just sitting there this whole time going, I'm taking all these like barbed wire and chair shots thing, but all I want to do is dance, man. All I want to do is dance.
That's all I wanted to ever do. That should have been my gimmick, damn it. Yeah, Terry Funk. What a character. And as he said in Beyond the Mat, because
the documentary that sort of provided the pun for this podcast name.
Indeed. It's because he grew up in that family. A lot like the Hearts, really. It's synonymous, really. If you've grown up in that life, that's all you know.
Yeah.
And so, yes, you have to suffer all the shittiness that comes with the wrestling. So, all the back problems and the drug issues and all of that. You have to deal with that. But at the end of the day, if that's all you've known, that's the cards you've been dealt. And unfortunately, it's not very nice. It's a hell of a lot better than life than a lot of people would have had, let's be honest.
I think this is not something that's necessarily unique to wrestling, this idea of like when athletes in general, whatever sport, aside from maybe like, I don't know, bowling, they get that sort of adrenaline and rush from competing, and when it's over, they don't know how to fill that. But with wrestling, it's even weirder because in competitive sport, once you get to a certain age, your body physically won't allow you to do it anymore. And yes, your body physically won't allow you to do it anymore in wrestling, but that age is like a lot longer. That process is a lot longer. And you can almost, in real sport, it sounds almost like I'm saying it's not real, in competitive team sports or individual sports, you can't lie to your body, whereas in wrestling, we've seen it before, certain people can and do.
Yeah, but that's where you get like the issues that follow up with, in there, like the addiction problems, because you need to keep fuel in your body so you can keep going. You're faking it, aren't you? I know it works on different levels, but you're faking it to yourself so that you can keep on going. You're running on empty, but just a few more lovely tasty drugs and you can keep doing it and keep getting a payday. The way that you want to do it, I'd imagine, this is talking from no sense whatsoever, but the way you want to do it, ideally, you have a good few years under your belt where you can make a bloody good name for yourself, get yourself in a mid-card scene at least for a couple of years, so you're not overdoing your body. Yes, you're going to be working a few more health shows than a lot of people if you're in the mid-card, but you then jump, you know when your time's up, and you get yourself a nice office job with the Fed that are going to keep paying for you, aren't they?
Well, there's a couple of things there that I want to mention, actually. You mentioned about, like, get yourself a nice little mid-card position, right? And I'm going to name someone in a second that pretty much fulfills that, exactly as you've said. And the question I want to ask, though, is that it's sort of broad and will go all over the place, so bear with me. Do you notice how a lot of the guys that go too far and have gone too far in the past are a lot older guys in general, and this sort of generation won't necessarily do that? So you look at, like, Ric Flair, Terry Funk, I'm going to throw him in here, but I feel like I'm being harsh, but I'm not really, because he's that sort of generation, The Undertaker. And then you look at a guy like The Miz, who's going to do exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
And like not have the injury sort of thing. And I don't know if this is a sort of generational thing whereby also as well, the money involved now, you don't have to go as long. Simple.
No. But one thing you do need to bear in mind is the different style of wrestling as well.
True.
You know, it's one thing for Ric Flair to be taking the bump off the top rope every single match for the last God knows how many years now, but it's different in terms of younger wrestlers because they still need to draw the crowd, and because the playing field is a lot more wide open now. There's so many different federations that you can go to. Yes, WWE isn't as mainstream as it used to be, but in terms of independent wrestling, that's not as big as it's ever been before. So if you want to try and make that leap from the indies to a large promotion, you need to sell yourself. And how are you selling yourself? If you can't cut a promo, you need to be doing flippy shit off the top of the rope, don't you? Into crowds and all this crazy stuff to make a name for yourself. And that's not good for your body either. No. How long can you go with that? People want to see you. So for the likes of Ricochet, who's been a massive name in Japan, in America to some extent, I think it's probably been larger in Japan, but certainly over the independent scene, he's now finally got to NXT. He's doing all this flips and stuff like that. As he gets older, because he's already older than some of the younger ones that have come in, or some of the ones that have gone straight through NXT, OVW, all of that sort of inside training with the Fed. So as an older person, how long can you do that? Because if you're only at NXT now, you're still putting your body through all of these flips and all these fancy moves. You're not going to be doing that when you're pushing the back end of 30, are you?
Well, I think it comes down in a sort of stylistic sense, in a way that wrestling has evolved in terms of what you see in the ring. The whole transition from Attitude Era to PG. There's a myriad of factors in that. And one of the factors in that is important is that, like, you can catch eyes with, like, one chair shot. But you're not going to do it because of like the concussion and all this and all that, and all the old hardcore style. And I know there are federations that do it, but in mainstream WWE, we're not getting that sort of let's smash each other over, Rock, Mick Foley at Royal Rumble sort of style. We're not having that.
Trying to kill him.
Yeah. So how do you get yourself known and seen and all that? And that leads into what you were saying about Ricochet and this. And I think the interesting comparison to make here is, and I actually think that the age factor plays a part in this. Look at the miles Daniel Bryan's put on his body in the years that he's wrestled. He's been wrestling since he's 19, and yes, he's come back, and we're all happy with that, but he's had to change his style even in the last 3 years of him wrestling. I don't mean 3 years full stop, I mean the year he was champion, the year he was injured and still around, and now.
Well, he certainly has, but we said on previous podcasts how the Daniel Bryan star seems to have slightly fallen. I don't want to get too far into what Daniel Bryan did when he was injured and all that sort of boring SmackDown GM nonsense. All right, we'll leave that for another day. So how's he still over? Yes, he's changed his style, but I think, this will sound bloody horrible, but is he riding the coattails of the whole I'm an underdog because I'm smaller than everyone else in the locker room?
I would disagree with that, because what I would say is the fact that, you said about the whole I'm addicted. I don't know if he would quite go so far as to admit that himself. I don't think addiction is the word he'd use. I think he'd say he loves, and he is in love with the business and wrestling in general. Because let's face it, Daniel Bryan was wrestling again. Regardless of whether it was with the Fed or not, he was wrestling again. Even to the point where, and I saw this clip not that long ago, and I didn't even know this existed, and fair play to the boy for shooting, but he called out Mick Foley and said that even you went to TNA.
Oh, did he say that?
Yeah.
Oh.
So he's like, how can you say, like, just to shut it down?
Yeah.
Like, when... And
yeah, but maybe Mickers is speaking from experience. He had a lot more of a hardcore in the rabbit ears again, this is, a hardcore style, and so...
This is going back to what you were saying about, or what we were saying about, like, the older generation of that. Mick Foley, I think, is a special exemption in all of them, because no one's taking those kind of bumps.
No.
And the whole aura of Mick Foley is the idea of, like, no one's going to do that. So he's sort of both the poster boy for that this whole sort of thing, and when you should call it a day and what you're actually prepared to do. And also at the same time, it doesn't even matter what you're thinking about that, because what kind of follow up to that? There's no guy doing, like, apart from maybe Shane McMahon, but that's ludicrous. But he does one bump a year.
Yeah, it's not like he's not got the money for the best health insurance.
He took a bump off a fucking helicopter when he was like in the sea.
Oh, rough.
What? He survived. He was fine.
Oh, yeah,
he was fine. He was fine. But like, I just got an image of like he's in the helicopter. It's going down. He's giving it the arms just as he's about to go down.
Yeah, he sees a trash can in the sea somewhere. Fuck it. Target acquired. Talking about the Terminator. Yeah, he's got the special vision up on screen.
I know there's a lot of fucking shit in the oceans these days, but if there's a trash can just bobbing along for Shawn Michaels to go and find, fair enough. Maybe there wasn't a crash at all. Maybe he just like that's his hobby.
Yeah.
He just likes dive bombing trash cans
Jumping
in the
off
sea.
things.
Yeah, fair play. In that regard, then, the question I want to ask is, in this sort of day and age, then, and we're seeing this with John Cena, like, how do you wrap your career up? Do you wrap your career up by sort of going away and doing something else, or do you wrap your career up by just not doing as many dates? Because for as much as we say about The Undertaker, when he should, what he should do with his wrestling career, he's still doing it.
Yeah, how do you give a goodbye? Because the only ones in recent memory where someone's not been fired actually left the business on like good terms. I can't remember when that happened last.
Forced retirements. Daniel Bryan, first time.
Edge,
Page.
Yeah. Just
that seems to be what happens now. It seems to be. It's really weird in a way that like you've got all these guys that wouldn't stop, and they don't get the big injuries, but these guys that are in this era where it's all supposed to be protected and that get these sudden death injuries that like are there's no coming back from, apart from Daniel Bryan who came back. I genuinely believe that we've seen the last of Edge, which is weird because we started talking about this, about how Shawn Michaels may be coming back. Shawn Michaels is different. I think he has a choice. Edge does not have a choice.
Don't you think it's like to some extent the nature of the beast though? Can you see anyone on the roster at the moment that has the rest of their career at WWE in terms of being like a lifer? So someone that will just keep on going and play out the rest of their career there, and actually you won't go out on a high note. That's the thing. If you're ever the whole rule is you lose your last match, don't you? Because you try and put someone over. But even then, can you see someone? It would have to be a high-profile match. So everyone in the mid-card, they're already out of the question, aren't they? I can't remember someone that's gone out and just gone, this is my last match, it's a retirement match, see you all later.
Ric Flair?
TNA.
Ric Flair's a weird one anyway, because I'm sure he's probably lost career matches somewhere else anyway.
Yeah, well, yeah, so going back to the nature of the beast, you're more likely just to get fired anyway. When your time is up, when the writers have nothing for you, get rid of him. We don't need him anymore.
Feels a bit callous. I suppose the whole industry.
Let's be honest.
Yeah, the whole industry is a bit like that then. So, I mean, as a plan then, is the whole industry geared toward that whole feeding the addiction of like keep going until you can't?
Yeah, I guess so.
Because what is the alternative? You either get fired, in which case you don't get what you want. Do you just have to keep going basically?
Yeah. That's all you can do, can't you? Just keep on working. I've just thought of one. He's not technically retired, but he's stepped away from it. The greatest big man of all time, The Big Show. He's stepped away from wrestling. Is he coming back? Is he going to have like one last match just for old time's sake?
He'll probably have a run, I would imagine.
What are you saying by run? Because there's no belt involved in this run.
No, a run of like a prominent storyline leading to a climax and some sort of ending.
Because he's already, you could, to some extent, there's already been rumours that he's left.
Yeah, I was wondering this today actually. I was trying to look at certain cases and what you would call endings of careers, and like with Big Show, there's actually quite a few places where you would have said, "Oh, could have done it here."
Yeah,
could have done it here, and he still hasn't. And I think for his sake, and for wrestling's sake, and for his legacy's sake, I'm quite glad he's not getting "please retire" chants.
Yeah,
that was a bit much.
It wasn't very nice, was it?
Nah.
But then he did have a decent. It wasn't really a run. It was just a series of matches against Braun Strowman. Because Strowman, he was essentially putting Braun Strowman over.
Yeah, that was
the whole point of it. I still think though, not to kiss the Big Show's ass too much, but he's still an attraction, isn't he? Because it's going back to the old Carney times, isn't it? Where if you've got a massive man. He's a freak show. That's what people want to come and see. They want to see great, big, unusual people.
Yeah. The thing with the Big Show is that it's both a blessing and a curse. And it's been like this his entire career. You could plug him in at any moment. That's the problem for him, because you could, realistically speaking, with the right storyline and the right idea, have him back on Raw next week.
Yes.
And the problem with that is they do it too often, where like you forget about him for 6 months, and then he's doing fucking Shokishi impressions, and then next week he's the world's largest athlete and dominating.
Is this going to? Did you listen to Steve Austin's podcast?
I haven't heard this.
Is this going into what? basically, he said he was on Steve Austin's podcast recently, and he was talking about Braun Strowman, and like you said, how if you're a bigger man, so if you're this whole sort of attraction thing, I know it's not the nicest way of putting it, but in my eyes, you are. If there's something different about you,
it's a way of drawing money at the end of the day. That's what business is
exactly.
about.
It's like the character of Bobby Lashley. If he wasn't jacked, if he didn't look like how he looks, would he still have a career?
No.
Well, of course he bloody wouldn't. But because he's a freak, because he's
he's a big fan of Scott Steiner.
Yeah. Because he's a genetic freak like that, then he is a draw, like you said. And anyway, going back to what I said, the Big Show was saying on Steve Austin's podcast, talking about Braun Strowman, his size is his curse, basically. Yes, you've got the appeal because you're a monster among men, but on the other hand, it takes that, a click of the fingers, for those that can't see, to become that comedy gimmick, like you're a comedy big man.
Yeah.
And they've already, to some extent, done that with Braun Strowman.
There is a bit of a whole, to humanise a big guy like that, they do go a bit too far the other way. It's happened with everyone. The only question I would ask, actually, you said about guys that, and I wouldn't necessarily call this a high profile sending off or even a sending off, but you're talking about transitions from wrestling to not. What about Kane? Gone and done his own thing. He comes back every now and then, gets plugged in exactly the same as what we're talking about. I mean, does he even get his final farewell?
Or is it just so now? I think he's that's a good shout. Yeah, maybe he's done what's right for business. He's come in. Yes, he's been wrestling for donkey's years, for maybe a bit too long anyway. But he came in. He made the big bucks. You can't say that.
And not only that,
he's not holding the big belt for X amount of years, or not holding it as long as someone else. He's held it a couple of times. That's fine. He's been upper mid card, if not main eventing a lot of things earlier on in his career. But he's made the big bucks. He's taken his bumps on his knees, so he's done that correctly as well. And he's out the door. And now, more power to him.
Oh yeah,
if he's going into politics and he's the mayor of Knoxville, Tennessee, I don't know where it is.
Johnny Knoxville.
Yeah, but if he's gone on to be the mayor, even fucking better. If you're going to use your profile for the right things and start making a few more bucks, why not?
Also, as well, I'm not his biggest fan by any stretch of the imagination, and I wouldn't necessarily say that like this rule applies to his entire career, but he's turned a lot of shit into good. I think that ratio is probably maybe like 55-45. But that's still more, that like if you're given that much shit, I don't know many wrestlers that have been given more terribleness to work with.
Chicken shit to chicken salad?
Potentially, although I don't like chicken salad, so. I don't like any salads really. So there is that. But before we talk about like the whole Shawn Michaels thing, which is actually the original point of this, I just want to ask the question then. If we just dance around this, or is there just no real retirement plan?
No, there's no real retirement plan.
And the fact of the matter is that like we're conditioned. I don't know if if like a fan that's like teenage, the current sort of demographic for WWE, I don't know if they would necessarily agree with this, but we would think any retirements, they're going to come back at some point. Whereas I think a lot of younger fans would have seen a lot of people go and not come back. So they might think that like this is for someone that goes.
What I would say is, if you've got a craft or a skill, yes, this is different to being a carpenter or a bricklayer or something like that. But
I'm a big fan of Bricklayer Mania, to be honest.
If you've got a craft or a skill and you can keep doing it, if you need to make a few more quid here or there, and if you're a big enough draw to go and do an indie event for a few hundred quid, why not? Go and do it if you need to. You've got your skill.
That brings us nicely then on to Shawn Michaels then, because I agree with what you're saying, and more power to you. At the end of the day, it's your choice. And nothing you or I can say, or any fucking smark on the planet can say, will change this, right? But, again, having completely invalidated everything we're about to say, does it affect his legacy if he comes back? Because very few retirements are legit and very few retirements are final, but Shawn's is one that was.
Yeah, it did seem like it was written in the stars. He'd drawn a line under that part of his life, and he'd moved on, and he did whatever else he did.
And not only that as well, one of the whole things about what we've been talking about over this whole podcast is that he looked at the time like he could still go. If Undertaker retired tomorrow, you'd probably be like, yeah, do you know what, fair play, lads.
You've done your time.
Yeah, you've done your time. You were sort of on the wind down anyway, that's fine. When Shawn Michaels retired, you're like, shit, there's a few more matches we could have got. I think that might be the allure of the idea of like, you can come back, because there is so much what you can do.
Yeah.
But for me, if he's going to come back, he fights Daniel Bryan, and that was way back when he was the guest referee.
I understand why they'd want to do it. I understand why he'd want to do it. I'm just not sure if it's the greatest idea, because I don't know how much a one-off match. Yes, it can make money in that one-off instance, but it's not going to like change the company or someone's career forever.
No, again, he's an attraction, and he's an attraction. You can't see. Let's take Heath Slater as an example. If Heath Slater retired in a few years after mid-carded jobbing to people, he's not the sort that's going to be brought back. So Shawn Michaels obviously is that draw, and he has still got it from his last match. Though he said, that's enough, I'm done now.
Yeah.
He has, I think it's safe to say, he probably has still got it. Looking at him, if you ever see press things or anything after his career, it's not like he's gone off the rails, is it?
No.
He found God and he got all nice and happy, and I found me smile, and I seem to have kept myself in shape to some extent.
Yeah.
So
He has had those occasional WrestleMania appearances where they have to, old guys have to beat up the new guys, and he's been in that a couple of times, and he's looked good.
Yeah, he looks like he can still throw a super kick without putting his hip out. Yeah.
Which is actually, and I'm much younger than him, and I can't do that.
No, exactly.
So yeah, fair play to him.
Who would he fight in his next match anyway?
The rumour is AJ Styles.
The Battle of the Christians. Whose God is better? My God or your God? It's the same,
same
God.
God,
Why
yeah.
are we fighting?
Yeah. So
Why
basically
are
what
we
you're
fighting?
saying is that all that build-up, all that hype, and then they get in the ring and hug, and that's the end of it. It's at least better than the idea of actually fighting God.
Oh yeah, that could be worse.
Shawn Michaels having been in that match.
So who's going over?
I wouldn't even talk about or speculate about the whole idea of what would happen in the match. I just don't know how much of a good idea it is. I mean, do I want to see it? Yes. Oh God, yes. It's almost sort of like I want to have my cake and eat it. Like, if Shawn Michaels is going to come back for one match, why not 3 or 5? Or let's just have him back.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? It's how are you going to book him into a match in the first place? How are you going to build up that angle? Because you're not going to have him. You're not going to have him show up on the night like the Undertaker.
Well, AJ Styles is sitting in the crowd with a non-alcoholic beverage, going, "Yeah, I'm waiting for Shawn."
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Just on the off chance he shows up.
I do think as well, though, you're talking about, and I do want to actually raise the point you said about like Heath Slater bringing him back, like the whole collection of jobbers that we have, and I'm using that. I use that term with affection because that's the role, and I'm fine with that. You say in 10, 20 years time, whatever they want to bring him back. If he retired in a couple of years, this is the whole point of nostalgia is to bring these guys back, like for 5 minutes or 2 seconds. And the really weird part about it, and this might actually play into the whole idea of why people keep coming back, because whenever you get that return pop, it's like, oh my God, where have you been all my life? You see the Royal Rumble, we don't get surprise entrances that much anymore, but when you do get a legit surprise, it's like, oh man, this guy was amazing, even if like you've hated him his whole career.
Man, I've missed Haku.
Yeah.
Hooray, he's back.
There are some guys that shouldn't get the pops they should, and I feel harsh in saying that, but just it's the fact of like, oh yeah, I remember you. So in that regards, any of the mid-card could come back tomorrow. If they retire today, they can come back quite literally the next day, because that's not being fired. But in terms of Shawn Michaels and that, it's just, I think with him, again, he's a sort of, when you've got those top guys, the attraction there is not so much the idea you say, oh, what can he be plugged into? Shawn Michaels is quite literally one of these guys you could plug into anything in any moment. Like the whole idea that he managed to set up a feud with like Hulk Hogan where he turned heel for a month and then turned back face again like the next night.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm fine with however they want to set that up. But just, if he's going to come back, if he's going to do it, I feel like, why do one? The only thing you would say is, if that's his whole idea, if he's gone to them and gone, I really want to do this one.
Yeah, and then it's almost like, yes, we'd book the dream match of, I'd probably put him against AJ Styles. I wouldn't bother having a belt on the line, I'd just make it this special attraction match. I like the idea of Shawn Michaels coming back, because I've never been his biggest fan, particularly after reading Bret Hart's book and hearing more about how Shawn Michaels used to be in the early days.
This is why Shawn Michaels is the greatest of all time, by the way.
Well, because he came back a few years later.
Because he's
won
had
the
two separate
Elimination
careers.
Chamber. Yeah. Even though his second career, he was the nice guy.
No, I don't care about his attitude as a person, because I've cheered wrestlers that are probably terrible people in the past.
Yeah.
It's the idea that, like, if you take Shawn Michaels' career before the back injury in and of itself, and nothing happens after he retires through injury, then that's still like a Hall of Fame career. If you take everything after the back injury and nothing before, that's a Hall of Fame career. He's had 2 Hall of Fame careers in one lifetime. So maybe it's just me personally, and the whole idea is like, I'm too attached to this and I don't want Shawn Michaels to ruin his legacy in my own head. But at the same time, I'd like to see some more Shawn Michaels matches.
I'd still have it just as a one-off special attraction thing. Just let him have his one match. I think I'm on the other side of the fence, and I think if you give him too many matches, then you are going to start tarnishing his career. Maybe if you put the few other matches, so what are we saying, 3-4 matches, put them on big pay-per-views, for fuck's sake. Please don't expose him on Raw. Please don't do these things. Don't put him over on free TV. Let him have a promo segment where he comes out at the start of Raw, or if he comes out at the very end of Raw, alright?
Yeah.
Let him have those moments when the viewership's going to be the highest. Let him give James Ellsworth a super kick.
Yeah.
Let him give someone else a super kick. Please don't just book him in these throwaway, shoddy matches.
Yeah, I agree. Basically, what you're saying is that, like, have a plan.
Yeah, and even then, I think it should be a series of matches against one guy. And so that's why I say do it against AJ Styles.
Yeah, or even just a series of matches, but they have a common thread. The whole, if you go back to, I'm going to get this wrong, but just hear me out. I think it was Bragging Rights or something terrible, Survivor Series maybe, but it was like Raw versus SmackDown. Do you know when they're trying to hype that feud? Like Raw versus SmackDown really well.
Yeah.
I think John Cena was on Raw at the time and then was on the SmackDown team or whatever. Regardless of circumstances, the whole brand superiority thing, and I think The Undertaker was talking about, like, you have to make SmackDown win. Words to that effect.
Yeah.
Because he's like the gatekeeper of SmackDown or whatever.
Of course.
And
what, even though it's the Rock show?
And what I would have done is have, like, you've got certain heels and faces on that team.
Yeah.
And have that team lose through, and then the Undertaker's retirement tour is going through those guys that lost.
That'd be good.
And then you culminate with, like, a match at WrestleMania at the end, and he's like, I've avenged the losses of SmackDown or whatever, and then you retire. It's basically, the whole point is not necessarily when a guy decides to go, it's how they decide to do that. Like, you know, I said to you about Ric Flair earlier in the podcast.
Yeah.
Forget about the fact that he'd gone to TNA afterwards. That send-off is a proper send-off. I think that's probably why you don't like what the TNA stuff afterwards, but, like, in and of itself it's fine. It's just the fact that you do that after this, which is like a full-on chapter in a book. It's literally the ending.
Yeah, and it's a dignified send-off as well. We're going to celebrate your career. We're going to almost get people to not break kayfabe because they're still in character. But when The Undertaker came out for Ric Flair's sort of final send-off and he got down to one knee, and I know everyone's seen it, it's a bit, looking back, I think it's a bit cringy now because you're just grown men playing characters. But when there is that sort of respect from a company that's given you X amount of years, yes, Ric Flair was with WCW and NWA for so long as well, but even if WWE are going to put you on that pedestal and put you as, they're basically going to praise you and put you over that much, don't then go to an inferior product.
Yeah, it's quite
a few more years.
No, do you know what?
Just
Actually,
for the bank balance.
Just to wrap this up, actually, that's a very interesting point because you're talking about Ric Flair as an entity. His WCW persona, and he's more WCW than he is WWE. He might disagree with that, but I wouldn't. And so, if you look at the last Nitro is the ending of Ric Flair WCW.
Yeah.
And what does he do? He comes out, he gives that impassioned promo, fights Sting. That right there is the end of a career, if you want to call it
so
that.
you're saying Ric Flair's got two
retirements?
He's already got 2 Hall of Fame.
It's not necessarily the end of Ric Flair, the wrestler, but it's the sort of, if you're telling the tale of WCW Ric Flair, that is a sort of perfect way to end it.
Yeah, that is the perfect way to end it. There's no more after this.
Yeah.
That's Ric Flair done.
And then you go on, and so basically, ironically enough, we're talking about how you get these, very rarely do you get the perfect ending. Ric Flair's actually had 2 and then carried on afterwards. Which actually goes back to what we were talking about at the start, which is that, like, you just got to keep going.
Actually, this comes back to episode fuck knows of the podcast, where we were talking about Raw or SmackDown becoming like seasons. Because that way, if it was a season, so if we had, I don't know, it went on for X amount of episodes or it went on for X amount of months, if you had someone's career that spanned over like 9 seasons of Raw or SmackDown, at the end of it, if this person wants to knock it on the head, happy days, just write them into a storyline where, see you later, then you're done.
I think
you're doing a spin-off series with Shane in The Walking Dead, or, I don't know, pick any wrestler at random, Rhino, and he's coming back for a few episodes. Result, because he wants a bit of payday.
I think the problem you've got, though, is that in that regard, we're talking about if you want to write them off, and that's what you should do.
Yeah.
But at the same time, people don't have the opportunity to be written off because the way they're going out is being injured for life.
that's your lot. It feels cruel in a way, because it's like you cannot, there's no way you can find that sort of middle ground of like, I want to go now, but I want to carry on. But if I carry on, I might not get the ending I want. Funny enough, we have reached the end.
We have.
You've got the ending you want listening, because you've listened to 40 odd minutes of fantastic wrestling podcast, and I'm sure you're going to get back on and listen to the next one right now, immediately. That's what they should do.
It'll probably be with Billy anyway, so skip that one and wait for mine the other week.
Oh, geez, you're trying to put yourself over. Man, this feud is building up. It's only going to get more intense.